Good afternoon, and thank you very much for joining us today for this media briefing on Sentinel-1C. Thank you for waiting a little bit. Before we introduce our expert panelists, some admin remarks for the members of the media who are joining us today. So at the end, we'll start with an introductory session, and at the end of the opening remarks, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions. Please remember to type your questions in the chat field on the right side, stating your name and your media outlet for those who may not know you. And then we will extend an invitation for you to speak. You will get a notification prompting you to unmute yourself. So please make sure you accept it, and then you'll be able to ask your question. Obviously, we can also read the question on your behalf. But without further ado, let me introduce our speakers today. So joining us are Simonetta Kelly, Director of Earth Observation Programs at ESA, Tony Tolker-Nielsen, Director of Space Transportation at the European Space Agency, Stéphane Israël, who's sitting together with him, CEO of Arianespace, Christoph Kautz, Director for Satellite Navigation and Earth Observation for DG DEFIS at the European Commission, Giulio Ranzo, CEO of Avio, and Enrico Zampolini, Vice President of the Observation and Navigation domain of Thales Alenia Space. Now, as you know, there has been an announcement shortly before this media briefing, so I'll first give the word to Stéphane Israël. Stéphane, over to you.
Yes, so dear colleagues, dear journalists, so thanks for sharing with us this briefing. So I am the CEO of Arianespace. Arianespace is a launch service provider and the operator of the VV25 mission. And you know that the VV25 mission will mark the return to flight of the Vega-C launcher. You know as well that we are now with our partner Avio in a period of transition. Avio has a responsibility since this summer of the sales and marketing of Vega. And Arianespace remains responsible of the 5 coming Vega-C launches, which should go up to the end of next year. And then Avio will have the full responsibility of the Vega-C launcher. So we have just announced today that we will have a very limited postponement of the mission due to additional checks and verification on the launcher. We will push, hopefully by 1 day, the mission. We will confirm you Friday that it is limited to 1 day, but this is today, I would say, our baseline expectation. So we can consider today that the launch should occur on December 4 instead of December 3. And you know that it is for the satellite Sentinel-1C of the Copernicus program, under the responsibility of the European Commission in the context of a contract which has been signed with the European Space Agency. So the launch is scheduled at 6:20 local time, PM, in French Guiana, for a mission which will last 1 hour and 43 minutes after liftoff. And we will place the Sentinel-1C passenger on a sun-synchronous orbit at an altitude of around 700 kilometers. So you know that in Guyana, we are now in the time of the satellite and the launcher campaign. The launcher campaign has started 3 October. The satellite campaign has started 8 October with the arrival of Sentinel-1C in French Guiana. And we will, one of the last milestones we will make is the famous Launch Readiness Review, LRR, which will give its final blessing to go to the final countdown and then to the launch. Well, Sentinel-1C, my colleagues will speak about it. What I can say is that it will be the 6th Sentinel satellite to be launched by Arianespace after 5 successful launches. And out of these 5 successful launches, 3 have been on Vega. And the last one was this year in September. And the Vega-C launcher has 4 more Copernicus satellites in its backlog: Sentinel-1D, Sentinel-3C, CO2M-A, and CO2M-B, which shows the commitment of the European Commission and ESA towards Vega-C for this flagship program. So that's all I wanted to say as an introduction. I can hand over to Giulio now.
Well, thank you very much for joining. As Stefan already anticipated, the launcher is currently completely integrated, has conducted all of his tests for the readiness to the launch. We will continue performing some checks and operational activities over the next few days. And then prior to launch, we will execute the launch readiness review as we normally do in cooperation with Arianespace, with the European Space Agency, with the French Space Agency, and with the customer. It is an important launch as it was anticipated, very important because we lift a flagship European satellite of the Copernicus constellation with a flagship European launcher, allow me to say, Vega-C. It is also a very important mission for Vega-C, as it was anticipated, because it's returning to flight after a flight anomaly, but after extensive work being done to secure a very safe flight condition. Vega-C features improved performances and characteristics and flexibility to lift European payloads to space. So we are very proud of having this capability made available, in particular to the European Commission, but in general to all other government and non-government institutions within Europe and abroad. So we look forward for the flight, and we will continue very intensely to work over the next few hours to make sure we conduct all of the routinary checks with the utmost care in the interest of the customer. So having said that, I would hand the word to the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Giulio. Simonetta, over to you to talk about the mission. Thank you.
Yes, good afternoon to all the representatives of the press. Just a few words about the mission. This is Sentinel-1C that's going to be launched next week. If we go to the next slide, we see how this fits in the remit of the Earth observation program of the agency. We have three lines of development: the meteorological mission with EUMETSAT, the Explorer, which is a science mission developed by ESA, and then we have Copernicus under the European Commission leadership. Those satellites are operational, are providing continuity of data over a longer period of time based on user requirements. And this is the third of the Sentinel-1, which are radar missions. If we go to the next one, we see really beyond the span of the 15 missions that currently we have in operation for Earth observation, how the first generation of the Sentinels has been developed. And we have 8 of those first generation Sentinels which are up and running. This is the third one after the first 1A and 1B, which were respectively launched in April 2014. 1A was the first ever Sentinel satellite to be launched, 1B in April 2016. And in this context, the role of ESA is the one to coordinate and manage the space component of the Copernicus program. We will hear more about it from Christophe from the Commission. If we go to the next one, or we click on top of exactly, we see the role of ESA and Copernicus. This is really to develop the space component of it, which means with the industry to develop the satellite missions, to launch them on behalf of the Commission, to operate some of those missions together with EUMETSAT for some of those. And you see here that we have already a variety of satellites up and running from 1A is still up and running, but it's pretty old, as you can understand, 10 years of operation. 1B stopped to leave about 2 years ago, and that's why we also have really the need to have a second Sentinel-1 up in the air with a rather, constellation working full speed and granting the repetitivity that we need in terms of repetitivity of data on the Earth for users. We have a different variety of other mission and instruments. Just to mention another one, we have Sentinel-5P as a precursor, provides data on methane, on NO2, on greenhouse gases. And we just launched a few weeks ago with the last Vega launch, Sentinel-2C, an optical mission, which is mostly devoted to forest and agriculture. If we go to the next slide, we see already the wealth of the data that Europe has available in terms of 300 terabytes per day. No, it was the previous one. Anyway, I can comment on that one. Is 300 terabytes per day of Copernicus data available for users. It's already 700,000 registered users. The policy is a free and open data policy for Sentinel and Copernicus. And since we've launched a new mechanism of distribution of the data, we have over 200,000 users registered with the new mechanism of interaction and accessing mechanism for the data. We have on Sentinel-1C radar sensors. It's a C-band radar, and this is really serving a wide range of applications, but it's also providing a 6-day periodicity in terms of revisit time. It has various watts in terms of the different elements of interferometric wave mode, and it's very important for a variety of applications. And those applications, of course, include marine surveillance, but not only. And the notation, the new element on Sentinel-1C on this third model is the fact that on top of the C-band radar, we have an AIS instrument, which is an automatic identification system that is really very much tailored to marine surveillance in terms of identification of the ships on top of the monitoring of the potential oil spill from ships. And that's really, I would say, a new element of value added of this third satellite mission. If we go to the next slide, just a mention about industry. Industry is really at the core of what we've been working in terms of developing this mission. Thales Alenia Space Italy has been the prime contractor for the mission. Airbus Germany has been developing the instrument, but overall, over 40 companies have been contributing to the work to develop this satellite. And this is really a story of, I would say, European collaboration among institutions, but also among the industry. And if we go to the last slide, I think I wanted to display you an example of those applications, actually a variety of examples, which shows you that the Sentinel-1, so radar mission, is really tailored to look at oil slicks and oil spills. We actually also provided support to develop an operational service on oil spill monitoring with EMSA, but is also very, tailored to do hurricane monitoring and also ground motion, which is a technique that was really developed in Europe on interferometry, which is very helpful in terms of science work on movements of the terrain, on also forecasting of everything that's related to the movements of the terrain, if you build, for example, in a city, but also in terms of science work on earthquakes. Of course, we also look at deforestation, and here you see a specific example over Brazil deforestation, and you can see through those images of radar data in areas which are inaccessible, cloud covered, and very interesting to look at that mapping made with the radar data. And of course, last but not least, iceberg monitoring, ice melting, and all what is related to climate change. So a lot of science, but also application, institutional application, very interesting. And the last image shows you an example of what was recently done in support of the Valencia crisis, where the Copernicus Emergency Service of the Commission was activated. If we go to the next slide, we see it hopefully, and actually also the Charter of Disaster of ESA. And we have worked with images combining different data sets from different sources, among those, of course, Sentinel-1 radar images, which are particularly relevant when you look at flooded areas. And here you see an image of the south area of Valencia from the radar Sentinel-1, but also combined products which look also at the extension of the flooding and the impact on the area from Sentinel-2 and 3. And with that, I'd like to conclude and pass the floor to the next speaker, which I think is Christophe.
Yes, I think so. Good afternoon. The Commission is, as you have understood, the program manager of the Copernicus program. And as just given the examples you have seen from Simonetta, Copernicus, and in particular also the Sentinel-1, they contribute to green and digital transition, to emergency management, resilience, etc. And for us, of course, as program manager, we have the duty to ensure the maintenance, continuity, and evolution of Copernicus, of the Sentinels. And in that sense, the launch of the Sentinel-1C next week is of crucial importance. You have heard it from Simonetta. We have currently only one Sentinel-1 working, the 1A. So it's important to have this launch next week. And I can say that the Sentinel-1 family is, if you want, sort of the working horse of Copernicus. Just to give you some figures, each month more than 150,000 products based on Sentinel-1 data are published and made available to users. And since the beginning of the operations of the Sentinel-1, we have generated over 30 petabytes of data, and more than 14 million products were made available. So it's really a very important mission for us. And overall, I can say that if you look also into the future and you look at market forecasts, you see that the overall revenues of the global Earth observation data and value-added service market are projected to reach several billions of euros. So also economically, clearly, it's a very important mission for us. And I will leave it with that, but of course, I'm happy to answer to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christoph. And over to you, Enrico, as representing the prime contractor of Thales Alenia Space here today. You'll have to unmute yourself, by the way, just so you. We cannot hear you. I think you're on mute, Enrico. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm okay now?
We can hear you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for that. Good afternoon to everybody. I'm Enrico Zampolini Faustini. I am the Vice President of Domain Observation and Navigation in Thales Alenia Space in Italy. And I took the responsibility of this role 2 months ago, and I'm very proud to be here today with you. So as I assume you know, Thales Alenia Space is a joint venture between Thales, 67%, and Leonardo, 33%. As you mentioned, we are the prime contractor of Sentinel-1C satellite. As prime contractor, we are in charge of the design, development, integration, and testing of the entire satellite. The satellite is based on Prima platform, that is a platform developed by Thales Alenia Space, and embarks, as Simonetta said, a C-band synthetic aperture radar that has been developed by Airbus Defense and Space. Again, as Simonetta already said, as a prime contractor, we are responsible for managing an industrial team of more than 60 partners and suppliers. But above all, we also develop crucial technology for the C-band synthetic aperture radar, like the transmit-receive modules and the front-end electronics. In addition, we are also responsible to develop the data link subsystem, the automatic identification system used for vessel traffic services, and the onboard computer. The mass of the satellite launch is about 2.3 tons, and it will be placed into a synchronous orbit at around 700 kilometers. The satellite will provide dual images in dual polarization with the resolution that Simonetta already showed you, up to 5 meters for resolution, and with the SWOT up to 400 kilometers. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Enrico. And we've talked about the mission, and now really it's also not just about Sentinel-1C this time. Tony, do you want to tell us more? And you're also muted, Tony, so you will have to unmute yourself.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adelina. Giulio already talked about, and also Stefan, that this is the return to flight of Vega-C. And we ESA oversaw an inquiry board that made a number of recommendations. All this has been carefully implemented by industry with us, ESA. We had a kind of integrated team, and Giulio talked about a lot of work that has been done, and I can confirm a lot of work have been done. We have implemented all the recommendations to the letter. We have made 2 testings firing tests of the Zefiro 40 engine to prove that we can go safely and reliable to flight with this return to flight. This is an important step for Europe's independent access to space, or let's say the re-establishment of this independent access to space. We did the inaugural flight of Ariane 6 in July, and with this return to flight, we are doing the next step in this establishment of our independent access to space. Vega or Vega-C is a complementary launcher to Ariane 6. Simonetta showed a lot of satellites in one of her slides, and all these Vega-C is actually a perfect launcher for all these satellites. So it's like a system of systems, this launcher with all these Earth observation satellites. So it's a very important step for Europe that we can return Vega-C to flight. And so this is why we are talking about the launcher as well, as you said, Adelina. It's also an important event for the space transportation sector in Europe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony, and thank you to all our panelists. So our media will now be, you're now welcome to ask questions. Please feel free to put them in the chat again. Please don't forget, to state your name as well as your media outlet. You can also raise your hand. Make sure that you are connected with headphones, though. If you want to ask the question yourself, we'll be sure to give you over the word. We'll make sure that as well that you get an unmute button that you can connect to, and then hopefully that will give you the word. I see already a first question coming through from Robert Wall, Aviation Week and Space Technology. Robert, would you like to ask your question directly? Otherwise, I'll read it out for you. You should receive a prompt right now to unmute. Robert, you're unmuted. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, first of all, for the time and everyone being here. Really appreciate it. Sorry if I missed it or if I missed the details of it, but can you give us a bit more color on exactly what is causing the one-day launch slip that you talked about at the get-go? And then just a few more programmatic issues. First, on the launcher, basically, when's the next launch after this one? And how many are you planning for next year? And what's the max launch rate per year that you are kind of industrially facilitating for? And then just a question on Sentinel-1. When should we expect Sentinel-1D, given the age of Sentinel-1A? Thank you very much.
Okay, maybe I can take this one, and Giulio can complement if he wishes to do so. Well, so regarding additional checks, I don't think there is a lot to elaborate unless Giulio wants to do it, because these operations are under the control of Avio in the context of the delivery at H0. But again, it's really a standard operations, and in the context of the standard operation, final preparation of the launch, we have to make an operation, and it will lead to a postponement, which is today estimated at 1 day. So we are speaking about something which is totally, I would say, which is not, which has very limited consequences, a postponement which is limited to 1 day. And I don't think there is a lot to elaborate on this point. What is important for us is when we lift off is to do all what we have to do to make sure that this return to flight, which has been prepared for so long, will be a great success, and I'm sure it will be the case. But Giulio will complement if he wishes to do so. And so next year, so for the launches we are preparing next year, we target with Avio to make 4 launches next year. And we should start with biomass. So this is today's the current plan. And for ESA again, again in a context where we should do 4 launches next year, maybe on the maximum cadence. I will leave this point to Giulio. And for Sentinel-1D, Maybe if Christophe Kautz wants to complement a little bit when the satellite will be available. But maybe I hand over to Giulio.
Thank you, Stefan. So on the first point on why 1 day of sleep, first of all, if we sleep even by 3 minutes, it is by a 1 day systematically, because we launch in sun-synchronous orbit, so we can only launch on a given date at a very precise time. We deem as an integrated team across Arianespace, ESA, Avio, and so on, we deem appropriate to conduct further checks and further activities to provide even better flight worthiness to the launch. It is some things we typically do in a culture of doubt, that where we see something we are not completely satisfied with, we'd love to intervene and conduct more checks. And I think it is important as a policy we have in Europe to ensure the maximum flight worthiness, that we do so, in particular for this very relevant flight, in full transparency, by the way, with the customer. This is very important. Then moving on, the question of what is the maximum launch rate. As Stefan was saying, for next year, we target to do up to 4 launches. This is the current level of capacity we can achieve. However, as a result of the European Space Agency Ministerial Conference held in 2022, since then, the member states have subscribed a program to increase the production capacity all the way up to approximately 6 launches per year. So what we are engaged on currently is a program that should enable us within the course of the next 2.5 years to unleash more capacity to launch more frequently from Kourou. In particular, at the launch site, this will require that we put in operation a so-called launcher pre-integration building that will enable us to integrate the launcher not on the launch pad, but on a nearby facility that was formerly used by Ariane 5 to pre-integrate the rocket, and that we use for Vega-C. So while we will be launching, let's say, 1 launcher on the pad, in parallel, we'll be already preparing the next launcher for launch. When this building will be fully operational, we will be able to reach up to a flight rate 6. In parallel, we are doing a lot of work with the European supply chain to ensure that all the industrial participants will also reach that level, but this is our target to be reached within 2.5 years. And I would leave it to Christophe to comment maybe on Sentinel-1D.
Yes, I think I can be very short. Currently, the launch of the Sentinel-1D is planned for September 2025.
Thank you very much.
If you want, I can comment this, the satellite readiness. So the satellite will be ready in September 2025, because we recently faced an issue on the thruster, and now we have to replace that, and that's a satellite readiness for September 25.
Thank you very much. Now, if once again, we'll wait a little bit to see if any other journalists have other questions that they would like to ask. Again, please don't hesitate to raise your hand or to write them in the chat, and we can read them out for you. Just let us know what you would prefer. Jeff Faust from Space News. Jeff, you will be handed over the microphone. If you can just accept the unmute prompt, and you'll be able to ask your question. You're unmuted. Thank you, Jeff.
Great. Just a quick question. How long after launch will it take to commission Sentinel-1C and put it into operational service?
Simonetta, would you like to answer?
Thank you, Jeff, for the question. Yes, you have the commissioning phase. We count about 3 months for commissioning phase. Normally, it's between 3 and 6 months, and we try to have this as fast as possible, but it's going to be minimum 3 months for commissioning.
Thank you very much, Simonetta. A question from Ulrike Ebner from Flug Review. Ulrike, you should also be able to unmute now. You're unmuted.
Hello?
We can hear.
Okay,
We
perfect.
can hear you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Stefan, Israel, you mentioned that you are in a period of transition. To what extent is Avio already involved into the management of this and the next Vega-C launches?
Yeah, so, and maybe Giulio can complement, but we are today in a framework where Avio is delivering to Arianespace the launcher at liftoff. And Avio has a full responsibility of all the operations leading to the launch. I would say under the overall supervision of or management of Arianespace as a launch service operator and provider. And this scheme, which has been defined in 2017, and so under which we are currently now working for years, will last up to 5 more Vega-C. And after 5 more Vega-C, Avio will not only deliver the launcher at liftoff, but Avio will have the full responsibility of all what is linked to the launch, including to become an operator in French Guiana and a launch service provider. So, in a nutshell, we do not change anything to our current organization up to the end of 25. We work on the mode we are working since 2017 on the 5 coming launches. I must say that ESA is also part of the story because after the anomaly we have had on the second Vega-C, we have made a tiger team with ESA, with Avio, with the support also of CNES and ASI. So things will change after the 5 coming launches. But what I can say is up to now, the responsibility of Avio, which is very important, is to deliver a flight-worthy launcher to Arianespace at H0. Arianespace is accepting this flight-worthy launcher, and then we lift off and we take care of all the relationship with the customer. But maybe Giulio or Tony, if you want to complement.
No particular comments. So we have been working in this operating mode, as Stefan was saying, let's say, starting from 2018. What will change in the future is the formality of the responsibility, or if you want, the liability on respecting the laws for access to space, the French law in particular for access to space, and of course the exposure to such responsibility. But since 2018, we have always been operationally involved in this activity, and this is fundamental because to be able to deliver a launcher at liftoff, it means we are involved in operations all the way up to the launch, essentially. I don't know, Tony, or if you have any further comments.
No, I have nothing to add. Fine.
Thank you very much. A question from Anne Bauer from Les Echos. I will unmute Anne, and the question was asked in French. If I can ask you to say it in English, otherwise I'm happy to translate for you. And you should have received a prompt to unmute, otherwise I can also read it. I think I'll read it because there may be a connection problem. So it's a question for Giulio Ranzo. What have been the main changes that were brought to this version of Vega-C since the accident of December 2022? Thank you.
So the main change that has been implemented is a modification in the design and the manufacturing of the nozzle of the second stage of the launcher, which is named Zefiro 40. In particular, we have changed the source of the material for the inner part of the nozzle of the second stage, where all the hot gases go through at extremely high temperature. So it's an extremely sophisticated material that needs to resist to more than 3000 degrees in temperature, and that did not perform nominally in our second Vega-C flight. So therefore, we have decided to change the material and the source for this material. We have redesigned consequently the nozzle to be applicable, let's say, with this type of material, to be flight worthy with this type of material. And we have performed 2 static firing tests on ground to verify that the solid rocket motor with this new nozzle material would perform as expected. The 2 tests that we have performed under, of course, joint work with the European Space Agency have revealed a very good performance of the Zefiro 40 with the new design and the new material. And as a consequence, this is the major difference that you will find on the Vega-C launcher. Moreover, I would say that in the course of the last 2 years, together with the European Space Agency and Arianespace, something that was mentioned before by Stefan, we have put in place a so-called Tiger team to review, in general, that all other launcher parts are flight worthy, that there are no issues with any parts provided by any supplier, with a number of investigations that we have performed at the level of avio operations on one side, but also at the level of the operations of all of our major suppliers, in particular, with particular focus on critical components. So we have taken the time to increase the robustness in the design and more importantly, in the manufacturing of the launcher over the last couple of years, to make sure that this would be fully robust and flight worthy.
Thank you very much. And we have a question from Leo Enright of Irish Television. Regarding the marine surveillance role, is this dependent on AIS, which of course requires cooperation by the vessels? Specifically, does this surveillance allow you to monitor the Russian ghost fleet?
Thank you. I guess I have to reply on this one. So the 2 elements of automated identification system, AIS, which is the novelty on board the 1C and the radar instrument, combined with allow much more precise, I would say, surveillance role for the marine traffic. And this is also supporting EMSA. Of course, it needs collaboration by ships. If you switch off the AIS, you don't see the ships, you don't have the identification, but what you still have, and that's why the system is pretty powerful, you still have the track of the vessels, which you can monitor through the satellite data that come down. So you have additional information elements, which is not the IAS in that case, but you can see ship tracks somehow also, and ship fluxes, and those are already monitored through satellite system, and those we will still have.
Thank you very much, Simonetta. And we've received a question by text message from Irish Enterprise. A question, I believe, for Simonetta. We just heard from Stéphanie Israel of biomass being launched next year, which seems to provide some of the services as well of one of the Sentinels with regards to forest tracking. Can you tell us whether this is a deliberate choice by ESA to have a mission that is complementary to Copernicus Sentinel?
Biomass is a mission in the context of what is called Earth Explorer missions, which are punctual missions of science relevance to, I would say, respond to science gaps in the Earth science context. And that's how it's been conceived. And it specifically will look at the, I would say, health of the biomass, health of the forest, health of the type of the vegetation. So it will be a very useful instrument in terms of looking at the health of the vegetation overall. What you do today, it's a one mission. Normally, these missions have a 3-year initial lifetime. They normally live longer, but it's not a series of missions like the Copernicus Sentinel missions are. Of course, you will combine data sets from biomass on the health of the forest, on the health of the vegetation, with data sets from Copernicus, which help us to understand better the extension of the forest, the thickness of the forest. So certainly we will use data sets both from Copernicus and biomass in a complementary way, and we will enhance our understanding of forest and land cover. Thank you to that mission as well.
Thank you very much, Simonetta. I see that we have another question from Robert. Robert, I will give you the floor again, and you shall be able to unmute your microphone. You've just received the prompt.
Got it. Hi, thank you.
Thank you.
Just wanted to check on the backlog for Vega-C. how many launches do you have on the books? And I guess for Avio, how is it now that you're taking over that activity? How's it going?
Stefan, do you want to start, or do I start?
Giulio, start, because on the backlog I have a dot. So if you have the precise number, please help me.
The reality of things is that we have approximately, let's say, 15 launches, 15 or 16 launches in backlog. The reality of things is that we have a number of contracts with a number of customers, but it is not just one contract, one flight, because in many cases we talk about multi-satellite launches where we launch more than one satellite at the same time with payload adapters, as you know, such as SSMS, that allow for multiple launches at the same time. And therefore, this is why I would say the order of magnitude is about 15 launches, give or take. I don't know, Stefan, if you have any further comments.
No, and after, we are in the process of working with Avio and our customers on the transfer of this contract, because what we would like to do, we do so 5 more launches, and then it means that for the 10 more which are in the backlog, they will be transferred to Avio, and we are now organizing that in a smooth transition with Avio and our customers. So this is part of what we are doing now.
Thank you very much. Another question which we received by text message from the Associated Press, from the news agency: if you cannot launch for weather reasons on the date that you expect, how often can the launch be postponed?
If we have an issue with the weather, then we launch the day after, so no problem. And it should be exactly the same time, so 6:20 p.m. And we have, as said by Giulio, it's an asynchronous windows. We need to launch at H0. We have no window for that, but it's one day postponement.
Sorry, I see more specification. It's actually asked whether you can launch anytime in December.
Yes, no problem.
Every day.
Every day.
One more comment on this aspect, which is important, I think, at European level for the spaceport. Typically, postponement due to weather forecast is caused by high altitude winds, which typically flow in the summer, so anywhere between July and August. And the reality of things is that we have worked over the past few years together with the French Space Agency to demonstrate the viability of these type of flights, even during the summer period. The result of this joint work with the French Space Agency was a substantial increase in the availability of the base, even during the summer period. So particularly now that we are within November, December, the availability of the launch base is extremely high, because there are very few high altitude winds at this point in time during the year. So I would say this is important because the European infrastructure now features a very good availability rate, which is probably uncommon when compared to other launch sites around the world. And so I think we have, in general, a pretty good availability over the next few months.
Thank you very much. And I remind the media joining us that this session is recorded, and it will be available on our website for you to review shortly after it concludes. If you have any other questions, feel free again to put them in the chat or to send them by text message through our media chat, and I'll be sure to read it out. If not, because you received plenty of information already, I'll wait a little bit, but we can also conclude the session here. I'll just give it a bit of time and see if there are any other questions. I see a hand that's been raised. I will give you the floor. If I can ask you to make sure that you state your name and your media before asking your question. Thank you. Your microphone has been unmuted.
Yes, and Shari, do you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. My question is simply, when exactly after takeoff will the ESOC in Darmstadt take over the control of the satellite?
Thank you. I'm not sure if it's a question for,
Probably.
yeah, I was going to say Enrico, probably. Thank you.
Oh, I don't know. Can you repeat the question? Because probably we already answered to this one. Huh?
I think what you mean is when is ESOC taking over? ESOC takes over immediately as for any Copernicus mission. The initial operation phase to support the initial operation of a mission is taken over by ESOC, the Operation Control Center, right after launch.
Yes.
And it lasts a few days.
Few days, yes. After Leo.
Thank you both for this clarification. And as you know, there will be other media sessions. Thank you to all our experts and to all the organizations. We have also a media session in Italian, one in Spanish and one in German that will take place on Friday with further information. And if you have any other questions, if the media has any other questions, they can always also email us after this. We'll be sure to put you in touch with our speakers. I do see an additional question by Ulrike Ebner from Flugreview. What are the next improvements planned for Vega? So what are the next improvement plans for Vega-C? Perhaps one that could be completed between Avio and Giulio and Tony.
Maybe I can start and give over to Giulio. We are presently just finished to negotiate the implementation of a major change to Vega. It's actually a change from Vega-C to Vega-E. And this Vega-E will be based on a new upper stage. It's actually the Z9 and the Avum that will be replaced by a liquid stage with an engine that are being developed by Avio, the M10, and it will be a locksmithing engine, so a locksmithing stage. And we plan to sign this contract before the end of the year. I hope Giulio will agree with this, because this is really my ambition. So I'll give over to you, Giulio.
Tony, I definitely agree. We can sign even right now remotely if you can. That'd be great. Anyway, maybe a couple of more comments. Between now and Vega-E, we will be implementing another improvement step in Vega-C, in that at some point we will introduce the larger first stage, which will be common to Ariane 6. Ariane 6 at some point will feature the so-called Block 2 using a P160 rather than a P120, so a longer first stage. This will provide the launcher with another 200 kilograms worth of payload performance, so it will slightly improve the performance. But most importantly, we will introduce on Vega-C new multi-payload adapters. In particular, we will feature the Vespa-C payload adapter. We will feature SSMS-C, so the SSMS version for Vega-C for flexible multi-payload solutions. So all of this is done to improve the flexibility of the solution to the requirements of the customers, and in particular to the need to launch more than one satellite at a time. Therefore, let's say there is a roadmap between now and 2028 to slightly improve performance first, introduce new payload adapters to increase flexibility, and then to reach what Tony was talking about, an upgraded version of Vega-C with a new cryogenic upper stage that will reach something like almost 3 tons in payload performance, therefore broadening still the capability of the launch.
Thank you very much. A question that comes in from a news agency: what are the evolution plans for the Copernicus program and for the Sentinel specifically?
Can you repeat that, please? The evolution what?
What are the evolution plans for the Copernicus program and the Sentinels specifically?
Okay, perhaps I start with the Copernicus program, then Simonetta can talk about the Sentinel. So as regards the Copernicus program, I would say under this multi-annual financial framework, of course, we will implement what is foreseen in the regulation. And in this context, of course, we will work on also evolution of the Sentinels, but Simonetta can talk about this. Longer term, we are analyzing also the possibility of an Earth observation governmental service, and at the space conference last January, so January nearly a year ago here in Brussels, we signed 2 industrial contracts to look into the feasibility of such an Earth observation governmental service, which means basically a service which is more focused on actors active in the security and defense world, and this also requires, of course, certain increased security requirements, and it might require higher visit times, more precision, etc. So we are studying all this. Cannot tell you whether we are going into this direction, but at least we are studying this for the future.
And if I may complement on the Sentinels, what we have agreed, I mean, the principles of Copernicus are on one side agreed with the Commission continuity, on the other side is enhancement of the service to user, which means we are working on the next generation of the current Sentinel mission. So we are currently, for example, in the ITT process for Sentinel-1 next generation. That next generation should enhance in terms of resolution. Also for Sentinel-2, we will go from 10 meters to about 5-meter resolution. So an improvement of the quality, the resolution of the data sets. The same is the plan for Sentinel-1 next generation. So an enhancement of the service, and I would say an improvement of that in terms of variety of elements. And then we're also building currently the expansion missions. Those were decided together with the Commission a few years ago. And basically, these are new type of families of Sentinel-6 again, which are based on additional policy requirements that were put on the table by the Commission with Arctic policy, for example, or the climate policy. And those expansion missions that we're currently building with European industry, they're meant to support really additional user requirements. Just an example, we have Crystal, which is one of those missions that will enhance capability with an altimeter on board to monitor ice and Arctic regions, or we have the CO2M mission, which is planned to be launched also end of 26, early 27, which will monitor CO2 anthropogenic emissions. So really supporting those EU policies, but with this new generation of expansion mission. And this, we work hand in hand with the Commission. On ESA, we have what is called the long-term scenario, which is sort of a long-term view of how this program should evolve in terms of its space component. And we discuss it daily, I would say, with Christophe and his team.
Thank you very much. A question that I will read out. Thales is announcing the project Carb Chaser. Is it part of Sentinel? And Anne has also attached just a small quote from a press release. So I do not see Enrico. Enrico is still connected. Enrico, if you could perhaps reply.
Yes.
Thank you.
No, it's not part of Sentinel. Is the cargo. I mean, the project is not part of Sentinel. It's part of the exploration. Is an exploration program, not an observation program.
Thank you very much for that answer. I don't know if Anne, you heard that answer, but Enrico was saying no, it's not part.
Okay. No, I noted that the program is not. No, is CO2, not is for the. Is not. We are not in charge of this. We're not in charge of this program. The CO2, or we are CO2M. We are in charge of the payload of this program. Okay, that is one of the Copernicus expansion program. Is clear, man? Is it
this
clear,
is what
man?
I'm wondering. Was that clear for you, Anne? If you can let us know. I'm not sure it was completely clear, because I see the question just re-asking and reconfirming that it is not.
The question is related to the CO2M program. Yes, we are in charge of this program.
Thank you. And so, thank you very much, Enrico. I think that was clear. Thank you. And I think we're now getting close to the end of this media briefing. I'd like to thank you all our panelists for being here and taking the time in their busy days to be here and to answer your questions on Sentinel-1C and on Vega-C. Just a few days before launch. We really appreciate it. Thank you to the media for joining us. And again, if you do have any other questions, feel free to email us at media@esa.int. We'll be sure to look at your questions and make sure that it's addressed by the correct organizations. Thank you, and I wish you all a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye-bye.